The city never truly sleeps. Even in the darkest hours, when most souls surrender to dreams, shadows move with purpose through empty streets. Some shadows are cast by streetlights. Others have no source at all. This is the story of Evelyn Stuart, a woman who thought she knew fear. But fear, like darkness, has layers. And sometimes, the thing you fear most isn't the monster in the shadows. It's discovering that the monster has been protecting you all along. Evelyn first noticed him 3 weeks ago. Not Richard. Not yet. The other one. It started small, as these things always do. A feeling. That primitive instinct that lives in the base of your skull, the one that whispers when eyes you cannot see are fixed upon you. She'd feel it while walking home from the gallery where she worked, her heels clicking against rain-slicked pavement. She'd feel it in the grocery store, between the aisles of produce and imported wines. She'd feel it most intensely in the silence of her apartment, when she'd pull her curtains closed and could have sworn, absolutely sworn, that she saw a figure standing beneath the streetlight across the road. But when she looked again, there was nothing. Never anything. Just her imagination, she told herself. Just the city playing tricks on her nerves. Evelyn Stuart prided herself on being rational. She had a master's degree in art history from Columbia. She managed one of Manhattan's most prestigious contemporary art galleries. She lived alone in a 5th-floor walk-up in Chelsea, paid her bills on time, and didn't believe in ghosts, superstitions, or irrational fears. But rationality doesn't stop the feeling of being watched. The first concrete evidence came on a Tuesday. She was closing the gallery late, long after her assistant had gone home. A new exhibition was opening Friday, a collection by an emerging Brazilian artist whose work explored themes of isolation in urban spaces. Ironic, given what was about to unfold in her own life. Evelyn locked the gallery door and activated the alarm system. The street was quiet, unusually so for Manhattan, even at 9 p.m. A light rain had started, misting the air with a silver haze that blurred the streetlights into halos of amber and white. Her apartment was only 6 blocks away. She usually walked it, enjoyed the transition from work to home, used the time to decompress. But tonight, something felt different. That feeling again, stronger now. Insistent. She turned to hail a cab. That's when she saw him. A man stood in the doorway of the closed boutique next to the gallery. He wasn't doing anything, really. Just standing. Watching. When their eyes met, he didn't look away. Didn't pretend to be checking his phone or waiting for someone. He just stared. Evelyn's heart kicked into a higher gear. She raised her hand for a taxi, trying to appear calm. A yellow cab pulled up within seconds. New York miracles do happen, and she climbed in, giving her address in a voice she worked to keep steady. As the cab pulled away, she looked back. He was walking into the street, watching her cab disappear into traffic. Standing in the rain like he didn't even feel it. That night, Evelyn barely slept. She told herself she was overreacting. New York was full of strange people. Someone staring at you didn't mean anything. It didn't. But the next day, he was there again. Not at the gallery. At her favorite coffee shop, 3 blocks from her apartment. She saw him through the window, sitting at a corner table with a cup he never drank from. When she decided not to go in, when she turned and walked quickly in the opposite direction, she could feel him following. She didn't look back. She walked straight to the nearest police precinct. Officer Ramirez was sympathetic but ultimately useless. "Has he approached you directly?" she asked, pen poised over a form. "No, but has he threatened you? Verbally or through messages?" "No, he just..." "Has he attempted to make contact in any way?" Evelyn's frustration mounted. "He's following me. He's everywhere I go." Officer Ramirez set down her pen. "Ms. Stuart, I understand this is frightening. But without a direct threat or contact, without him violating an order of protection, there's very little we can do. We can't arrest someone for being in public spaces. Even when he's clearly stalking me? Do you know his name? Do you have any photographs? Any evidence of a pattern?" Evelyn didn't. She'd been too afraid to take out her phone, too focused on getting away. "Start documenting everything," Ramirez advised. Times, locations, what he's wearing. If he approaches you or makes any threats, call 911 immediately. And consider varying your routine. Don't go to the same places at the same times. It was good advice. Practical advice. Completely inadequate advice. Because the thing about stalkers, the thing the system doesn't account for, is that they're patient. They're observant. And they're always 3 steps ahead of your attempts to evade them. Over the next week, Evelyn tried everything. She left work at different times, took different routes home, stopped going to her regular coffee shop. She started having groceries delivered. She asked her assistant, Marcus, to walk her to the subway some evenings. But the feeling never left. And 3 times she could confirm, she saw him. Once on the subway platform, standing too close while pretending to read. Once outside her gym at 6 in the morning, a time she'd only recently started going. And once, most terrifyingly, standing across the street from her apartment building at 2 a.m. when she got up to get water and happened to glance out the window. He was looking up, directly at her window, as if he knew exactly which one was hers. Evelyn bought new locks for her door. She stopped opening her curtains. She started sleeping with a knife under her pillow and her phone fully charged on the nightstand. She told her friends. They were supportive, concerned. They told her to keep reporting to the police, to consider a restraining order, though she still didn't know his name or address, to maybe stay with someone for a while. But Evelyn refused to be driven from her home. She'd worked too hard for her independence, her space, her life. She wouldn't let some creep take that from her. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that she wasn't as alone as she felt. Someone else was watching. Someone who'd been watching much longer. And unlike her stalker, this watcher had every intention of intervening. It happened on a Friday, 2 weeks after that first sighting outside the gallery. The Brazilian artist's exhibition had been a success. Critics loved it, 3 pieces sold opening night, and the artist himself had been charming and grateful. Evelyn should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt exhausted. The constant vigilance, the broken sleep, the anxiety that had become her new baseline, it was wearing her down. She left the gallery at 10 p.m., later than she'd planned. Marcus offered to wait and share a cab, but she declined. She was tired of being afraid, tired of adjusting her life around someone else's sick obsession. 6 blocks. She'd walked them hundreds of times. The rain had returned, heavier now. Evelyn opened her umbrella and started walking, her free hand wrapped around the pepper spray in her pocket. The streets were moderately busy, people leaving late dinners, heading to bars, living their normal, unafraid lives. She made it 4 blocks. The 5th block was quieter, a stretch of closed offices and a construction site surrounded by plywood barriers. Evelyn's pace quickened. Almost home. Almost safe. That's when she heard the footsteps behind her, matching her rhythm. Her heart hammered. Don't look back. Keep walking. There's a bodega on the next corner, lights on, people inside. But the footsteps were getting closer. She looked. It was him. Closer than he'd ever been, close enough that she could see his face clearly for the first time. Ordinary. That was the worst part. He looked completely ordinary. Mid-30s, average height, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. He could have been anyone. An accountant. A teacher. Someone's colleague or neighbor. He smiled when their eyes met. Evelyn ran. She heard him running behind her, his footsteps splashing through puddles, gaining on her. The bodega was still half a block away, her apartment building beyond that. Her umbrella fell, forgotten. Rain soaked through her coat. She opened her mouth to scream. And then everything happened at once. Something moved in the shadows to her right, moved with impossible speed. There was a sound, not quite a growl, not quite a hiss, and suddenly her pursuer wasn't behind her anymore. Evelyn spun around. The man was on the ground, sprawled against the plywood construction barrier. Standing over him was someone new. Someone who hadn't been there a second ago. A man, tall and dark-haired, wearing a long black coat that moved around him like living shadow. Even in the dim streetlight, even with rain obscuring everything, Evelyn could see that he was beautiful in an unsettling way. Too pale. Too still. Too perfect. "Leave," the stranger said. His voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made the air feel heavy. "Leave this city. If I see you near her again, I will not be merciful." The stalker scrambled to his feet, his face white with terror. He looked at the stranger, then at Evelyn, then back at the stranger. Without a word, he turned and ran, disappearing into the rain like smoke. Evelyn stood frozen, her breath coming in gasps. The stranger turned to face her. His eyes were the color of old silver. They seemed to catch light that wasn't there. "You're safe now," he said. And then, like her stalker, like the rain itself, he was gone. Evelyn didn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch, lights blazing, replaying the scene over and over. What had happened? Who was that man? How had he moved so fast? And that voice, she could still hear it, feel it resonating in her chest like a physical thing. Part of her wondered if she'd hallucinated the whole thing. The stress, the fear, the lack of sleep. Maybe her mind had conjured a rescuer, a dark guardian to make her feel safe. But her stalker had run. That was real. The terror on his face had been real. And there'd been something else. Something she only realized in retrospect. When the stranger had appeared, when he'd been standing over her stalker, she'd seen his face in profile for just a moment. He'd had no breath in the cold air. No fog of condensation. Nothing. She spent Saturday in a daze, jumping at every sound, looking out her window every few minutes. The street below looked normal. No stalker. No mysterious rescuer. Just ordinary people living ordinary lives. By Sunday, she'd almost convinced herself it had been a one-time thing. Some good Samaritan who'd seen what was happening and intervened. The lack of breath, a trick of the light. The impossible speed, adrenaline playing tricks on her perception. She went back to work Monday with something almost like relief. But at closing time, when she locked the gallery door and stepped onto the sidewalk, she felt it again. Not the stalker. Something else. A presence, but not a threatening one. Protective. Watchful. She looked around, searching the shadows. Nothing. No one. "I know you're there," she said quietly, feeling foolish even as the words left her mouth. "I don't know who you are, but thank you. For Friday night." The shadows didn't answer. But Evelyn could have sworn they shifted slightly, a response she felt rather than saw. She walked home without incident. And the next night. And the night after that. Her stalker never reappeared. But the feeling of being watched remained. Only now, it didn't make her afraid. 2 weeks passed. Evelyn's life started returning to normal. She slept better. She stopped checking over her shoulder every few steps. The constant knot of anxiety in her stomach began to loosen. But she couldn't stop thinking about him. Her mysterious rescuer. She found herself looking for him, scanning crowds, studying faces. Part of her wanted to see him again. Part of her was terrified of what it would mean if she did. She got her answer on a Wednesday night. The gallery was hosting a private viewing for potential buyers. Evelyn wore a black dress, heels, her professional smile. She navigated conversations about composition and cultural significance, poured wine, facilitated introductions. By 9 p.m., the last guests were leaving, and she was exhausted. She was locking the door when she felt it. That presence, stronger than ever before. She turned. He was standing across the street, partially obscured by shadow, but definitely there. Definitely real. The streetlight should have illuminated his features, but somehow the light seemed to slide off him, leaving his face in darkness. Evelyn's heart raced, but not with fear. With something else. Anticipation. Recognition. Before she could think better of it, she crossed the street. He didn't move as she approached, didn't retreat into the shadows. Up close, she could see him more clearly. High cheekbones, dark hair that fell past his collar, and those extraordinary eyes, silver-gray and ancient, like they'd seen centuries pass. "It's you," she said. "You've been watching me." Yes. No denial. No explanation. Why? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, because you needed protection. From him. My stalker. Among other things. Evelyn studied him. In the 2 weeks since that night, she'd built him up in her mind, mythologized him. But standing here now, she realized the reality was even stranger than her imagination. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Richard Nate." "And what are you?" His lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "Perceptive. You move too fast. You have no reflection in that window." She gestured to the boutique behind him, where his image should have appeared in the darkened glass. "And that night in the rain, you weren't breathing." "No," he agreed quietly. "I wasn't." The truth hung between them, unspoken but undeniable. "This is insane," Evelyn whispered. "Vampires aren't real." And yet. He spread his hands slightly, a gesture that seemed to say, "Here I am." Evelyn should have run. Should have screamed. Should have done anything except what she did, which was step closer. "How long?" she asked. "How long have you been watching me?" 6 months. The answer shocked her. 6 months. But the stalker was only the most recent threat. There have been others. Situations you never knew about because I made certain you never had to. Why? The question burst from her. Why me? I'm no one special. Just a gallery curator. Why would a... She couldn't say the word. Why would you protect me? Richard was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost reluctant. "Because 200 years ago, I failed to protect someone who looked exactly like you." They sat in a closed café. Richard had somehow produced a key, and he told her a story that should have been impossible. "Her name was Eleanor," he began. "It was 1823, and I was not what I am now. I was human. A physician in London, idealistic and foolish. Eleanor was a patient's daughter, beautiful and kind, with a laugh that could light up the darkest room." His eyes grew distant, focused on memories Evelyn couldn't see. "We fell in love, as people do. I planned to ask her father for her hand. But before I could, she was murdered. Killed by a man who'd become obsessed with her, who believed if he couldn't have her, no one would." "I'm sorry," Evelyn whispered. Richard continued as if she hadn't spoken. "I found her body. The magistrate caught the man eventually, but it didn't matter. Eleanor was gone. I went mad with grief. I wanted to die, to follow her into whatever came after. What happened? I was approached by a creature who offered me a choice. Die and join Eleanor, or live forever with the power to ensure no one else suffered as she had. I chose rage over grief. I chose vengeance. I became this." He looked at her directly then, and Evelyn saw the weight of centuries in his eyes. "For 200 years, I have walked the night. I have saved hundreds, perhaps thousands, from fates similar to Eleanor's. I hunt those who would harm the innocent. And 6 months ago, I saw you." "Why me?" Evelyn asked again. "You have her face. Her eyes. When I first saw you leaving your gallery, it was like seeing a ghost. I told myself I would watch for a night, satisfy my curiosity, and move on. But then I saw the way you moved through the world. Confident, passionate, alive. And I couldn't leave. You've been stalking me." "Yes," he admitted. "Though my intentions were never to frighten you. I stayed in the shadows. I made certain you never knew. Until your stalker became too dangerous, too bold. I couldn't remain hidden any longer." Evelyn should have been horrified, should have felt violated, afraid. But instead, she felt something else. Understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of it. "Are you saying I'm a reincarnation of Eleanor?" "I don't know," Richard said honestly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps the universe simply has a sense of irony. It doesn't matter. You are not Eleanor. You are Evelyn. And you deserve to live your life free from fear." protected by a vampire. If you'll allow it. It was insane. All of it. And yet, sitting across from Richard in the dim café, Evelyn felt safer than she had in months. Maybe years. "What happened to my stalker?" she asked. "He left the city, as I commanded. I made certain he understood the consequences if he returned." "Did you kill him?" "No. I am a monster, Evelyn, but I have rules. I do not kill unless there is no other choice. He was merely a coward, not a murderer." Fear was sufficient. Evelyn processed this. "And what happens now?" "That depends on you. I can disappear, if you wish. Remove myself from your life entirely. Or I can continue to watch over you, though now you'll know I'm there." "Those are my only options." Something flickered in Richard's eyes. "What other option would you suggest?" Evelyn surprised herself with her answer. "I want to know you. Not as a shadow or a guardian, but as whatever this is. Whatever you are. That's dangerous. So is living in New York." "I'm not human, Evelyn. I'm a predator. Being near me saved my life," she interrupted. "You saved my life, Richard. I'm not afraid of you. Perhaps you should be. But I'm not." They stared at each other across the small table. Evelyn could see the war playing out behind Richard's eyes. Duty versus desire, protection versus connection. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well. But there are things you need to understand. Rules we must follow if this is to work. Tell me." Over the following weeks, Evelyn learned what it meant to exist in Richard's world. He was not like the vampires of movies and books. He could walk in sunlight, though he preferred not to. It weakened him, made him vulnerable. He did drink blood, but he obtained it through a network of willing donors who understood what he was. He had no need to kill, no desire to. "I remember being human," he told her one night as they walked through Central Park, long after the gates had officially closed. "I remember the warmth of the sun on my face, the taste of food, the simple pleasure of sleep. I won't take human life frivolously. Every person who dies is someone's Eleanor." Evelyn learned that Richard owned several properties throughout the city, accumulated over decades of careful investment. He was wealthy in the way only immortal beings could be, with compound interest working in his favor for centuries. He showed her his library, thousands of books in a dozen languages, some so old they required special handling. He shared his love of music, playing piano pieces from composers long dead, some written specifically for him by friends he'd outlived. "Don't you get lonely?" Evelyn asked one evening as they sat in his apartment, a renovated brownstone in the West Village with blackout curtains and walls lined with art. "Always," Richard admitted. "Immortality is isolation. Everyone I've ever cared for has died. Friends, lovers, even enemies, all gone to dust while I remain. It's the price of this existence." "Then why continue?" "Because someone must. Because there are people like you in the world, people who deserve protection. And because I made a promise 2 centuries ago that I would not waste the dark gift I'd been given." But as the weeks passed, something shifted between them. What had started as Richard's obligation, protecting Evelyn out of guilt and memory, became something deeper. They talked for hours, about art and history, about philosophy and mortality. Evelyn found herself looking forward to nightfall, when Richard would emerge from wherever he spent his days. She introduced him to modern culture, Netflix series and memes, food delivery apps, and social media. He taught her about history she'd only read in books, sharing first-hand accounts of events that had shaped the world. "You're smiling more," Evelyn observed one night. Richard looked startled, as if he hadn't realized. "Am I?" "Yes. It's nice. You should do it more often." "Perhaps I have reason to." The attraction between them was undeniable, electric. But Richard maintained careful distance, never touching her beyond the occasional guiding hand at her elbow, never allowing himself to get too close. "Why?" Evelyn finally asked, frustrated by his restraint. They were in her apartment. He'd been invited in weeks ago, a fact he'd solemnly acknowledged was significant in vampire lore. She'd made coffee for herself, poured wine she knew he'd only pretend to drink. "Because I'm dangerous," Richard said simply. "You keep saying that, but you've never hurt me." "Not yet. But the urge is always there, Evelyn. Every time I'm near you, I can hear your heartbeat, smell your blood. Every instinct I have, every predatory drive, tells me to—" He stopped, turned away. "I care for you too much to risk it." "Care for me," Evelyn repeated softly. "Is that what this is?" "You know it is." She stood, crossing to where he stood by the window. "Then stop pushing me away. I'm not Eleanor, Richard. I'm not a memory or a ghost. I'm here now, and I'm choosing this. Choosing you. You don't understand what you're asking. Then help me understand." He turned to face her, and the anguish in his expression nearly broke her heart. "If I love you, I will lose you. Humans are fragile, temporary. You'll age, grow old, die. And I'll be left alone again, with another ghost to haunt me. So your solution is to push me away now? To deny us both the chance at something real because you're afraid of eventual pain?" "Yes," he said bluntly. "Because the pain of losing you slowly, over years, would be infinitely worse than the pain of keeping my distance." Evelyn reached up, placing her hand against his chest, where a heart no longer beat. "You're already in pain, Richard. I can see it every time you look at me. Every time you force yourself to leave when you want to stay. Evelyn. Life is temporary. That's what makes it precious. I could die tomorrow, hit by a car or diagnosed with cancer or struck by any of 1,000 random tragedies. Would you rather have loved me or watched me from the shadows, always wondering what might have been?" He closed his eyes. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. Love is always a risk. But it's a risk worth taking." When Richard opened his eyes, something had changed in them. The careful control, the century of restraint, cracked. "If we do this," he said slowly, "if I allow myself to love you, I want to give you something in return. Not immortality. I would never curse you with this existence without your full knowledge and consent. But protection. Power. A way to defend yourself in a world that's more dangerous than you know." "What do you mean?" "I mean that vampires are not the only things that walk the night. There are creatures far worse, and some have taken notice of you. Of us. If you're going to be part of my world, you need to be able to survive in it." Part 8. Shadows and Revelations. Richard's warning proved prophetic sooner than either of them expected. It started with small things. Evelyn would come home to find objects moved, though she knew she'd left them elsewhere. Shadows in her apartment seemed darker, denser. She'd hear whispers at the edge of her hearing, words and languages she didn't understand. Richard noticed immediately. "You're being marked," he said grimly. "Watched by something ancient. Something like you?" "No. Something far older and considerably less civilized." He increased his vigilance, staying closer, and teaching Evelyn basic protection rituals. Salt lines. Iron nails. Words in Latin that burned on the tongue but made the shadows retreat. "What is it?" Evelyn demanded. "What's after me?" "I'm not certain. But I have suspicions. There are beings who feed on fear, on suffering. Your stalker drew attention. Your terror was a beacon to creatures who hunger for such things. And when I intervened, when I claimed you as under my protection, I issued a challenge." "So this is your fault?" "Yes." No hesitation, no defensiveness. Just acceptance. But Evelyn wasn't angry. She'd seen enough of Richard's world to understand its rules. "Then we deal with it together." The confrontation came on a moonless night. Evelyn was alone in the gallery. Richard had been investigating leads, trying to identify their stalker. She was working late, preparing for a new installation, when the lights began to flicker. Not the brownout flicker of electrical problems. This was rhythmic, deliberate. The shadows between the lights grew thick, almost solid. "Richard!" Evelyn called out, reaching for her phone. The shadows answered with a voice like grinding stone. He cannot help you, little mouse. He has claimed you, but he is not here. The temperature dropped. Evelyn's breath misted in the air. From the shadows emerged something. Vaguely humanoid but wrong, all angles and emptiness, like a hole cut from reality wearing a costume of night. What do you want? Evelyn demanded, backing toward the door. What all predators want. To feed. Your fear is exquisite. I have tasted it, sipped from it for weeks. But now I want the full measure. The creature moved forward. Evelyn threw salt. Richard had made her carry some at all times. The creature hissed, recoiling, but it didn't stop. Iron, Evelyn gasped, pulling out the small knife Richard had given her, cold iron that burned creatures of darkness. The creature laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Toys. Your vampire has given you toys and believed you safe. It lunged. Evelyn slashed with the iron blade, and the creature screamed, its form distorting. But it recovered quickly, faster than she'd expected. She was going to die. The realization hit with crystal clarity. Richard couldn't reach her in time. Her mortal weapons were insufficient. And then the gallery's front window exploded inward in a shower of glass. Richard came through like a storm, moving so fast he was barely visible. He hit the shadow creature with enough force to send it crashing through a wall into the gallery's office. "Get out!" he roared at Evelyn. "Run!" But she didn't. She couldn't. Because in that moment, she saw Richard as he truly was. Saw the monster he'd kept carefully hidden behind his civilized facade. His eyes glowed silver-white, his fangs extended, and there was a power radiating from him that made the air crackle like before a lightning strike. He was beautiful and terrifying, and Evelyn understood why humanity had feared his kind for millennia. The shadow creature recovered, rising from the debris. Vampire. This human is marked as mine. She is marked as mine, Richard snarled, his voice resonating with command that made Evelyn's bones vibrate. She is under my protection, witnessed by the old laws. Challenge me if you dare, but know that I have walked this earth for 2 centuries, and I have ended things far older than you. The creature hesitated. In the hierarchy of nightmares, vampires ranked high, and Richard was clearly no newborn. The old laws, it hissed finally. You invoke them? I do. This human is my companion, my ward, and any who harm her answer to me. Spread the word through whatever dark holes you crawl from. Evelyn Stuart is protected. For a long moment, the creature stared at Richard, then at Evelyn. Finally, it began to dissipate, melting back into shadow. Witnessed, it said, the word like a binding. But know this, vampire. Protect her as you will, but death comes for all mortals. And when it does, she will be free game. Then it was gone, leaving only destruction and silence. Richard stood in the center of the ruined gallery, his chest heaving despite having no need to breathe, a remnant of humanity, perhaps. Slowly, his eyes dimmed back to silver gray, his fangs retracted. He turned to Evelyn. Are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You shouldn't have seen that. Shouldn't have been exposed to. Stop, Evelyn interrupted. She walked over broken glass and scattered art pieces until she stood before him. Stop apologizing for what you are. You saved my life. Again. I endangered it by being near you. No. You protected it. There's a difference. Richard looked down at her, something like wonder crossing his features. You're not afraid. I'm terrified, Evelyn corrected. But not of you. Never of you. She reached up and pulled his face down to hers, kissing him with all the pent-up emotion of the past weeks. For a moment, Richard went rigid with shock. Then his arms came around her, careful despite his strength, and he kissed her back with 200 years of loneliness and longing. When they finally parted, both were trembling. This is a mistake, Richard whispered. Probably, Evelyn agreed. But I'm making it anyway. The months that followed were unlike anything Evelyn had imagined her life could be. Richard taught her about the hidden world beneath the city's surface. The vampire courts that governed supernatural politics. The various creatures that existed in the margins, not all hostile, many simply trying to survive in a world not made for them. The history that had been erased or mythologized, the truth behind legends. In return, Evelyn kept Richard tethered to humanity. She made him laugh, made him watch reality TV shows he pretended to find ridiculous, made him remember what it felt like to simply be rather than merely exist. They fell in love slowly, then all at once. Richard was careful always, holding back his strength, his hunger. But Evelyn learned his tells, the moments when his control wavered. The way his eyes would darken when she wore certain perfumes. The way he'd grip the arm of his chair when she sat too close. "You can feed from me," she offered one night. "If you need to." "No." The word was immediate, final. "Why not? You said you have willing donors." "They are strangers who understand the transaction." "You are." He struggled for words. "You are precious to me. I will not risk it." But desire, Evelyn learned, was not so easily denied. It happened on a night when Richard had been injured, a fight with something he refused to name, protecting a child who'd wandered into the wrong part of the city. He was healing, but slowly, and Evelyn could see he was weakened. "Feed," she insisted. "Just a little. Just enough to heal. Evelyn. I trust you." Those 3 words broke through his resistance. Slowly, carefully, he pulled her close. His fangs extended, and Evelyn felt a moment of instinctive fear. Then he bit, and the pain transformed into something else entirely. Pleasure. Connection. A sharing deeper than any physical intimacy she'd ever experienced. She could feel Richard's relief, his joy, his love flowing into her even as her blood flowed into him. He stopped after only moments, pulling back despite her protest. His eyes were glowing, his face transformed with ecstasy and horror. "More," Evelyn whispered. "No. Never again." I nearly couldn't stop. But they both knew it wasn't true. It would happen again. And again. Because this was what they were to each other now, bound by blood and choice, darkness and desire. "I love you," Richard said, the words torn from him like a confession. "God help me, I love you." "Then stop fighting it," Evelyn replied, her hand against his cheek. "Love me, all of me, for however long we have." And he did. 6 months into their relationship, Richard made Evelyn an offer she'd known was coming. They were in his library, her favorite place in all his properties. Rain hammered against the windows while she sat curled in a leather chair, reading a first edition of Dracula that Richard kept purely for ironic value. "Have you thought about forever?" he asked suddenly. Evelyn looked up. "Forever." "Immortality. Becoming like me." She set the book aside carefully. "You said you'd never curse someone with this existence." "And I meant it. But circumstances change. Feelings change. And every day I'm with you, I'm aware that you're aging, moving toward an end I'll have to witness. I've done it before, Evelyn. I don't know if I can survive doing it again." "So this is about you?" "No," he said quietly. "It's about us. About the possibility of truly forever, not just borrowed time." Evelyn stood, crossing to where he sat by the empty fireplace. "Tell me honestly, what would I become?" "A vampire. You'd need blood to survive, though you could train yourself to need less than most. You'd be stronger, faster, nearly impossible to kill. You'd stop aging at whatever point we perform the transformation." "And the downsides?" "Sunlight would weaken you, though not destroy you as myth suggests. You'd lose the taste for human food, the simple pleasure of a meal shared with friends. You'd watch everyone you know now grow old and die while you remained unchanged. You'd carry the weight of immortality, the isolation, the endless years." "Would I still be me?" "Yes. The transformation changes the body, grants power, but the soul, if such a thing exists, remains intact. You would still be Evelyn. But you'd be Evelyn eternal." She thought about it. Really thought about it. Thought about her parents, aging now, who she'd have to watch die. Her friends, her career, her life as she knew it. All of it would end, one way or another. "Can I have time?" she asked. "To decide. All the time you need. This isn't a choice to make lightly." But fate, as it often does, took the choice out of their hands. It happened on a cold December night. Evelyn was walking home from a gallery event. Richard was supposed to meet her, but he'd been delayed handling some vampire court business. She wasn't worried. After months of living in Richard's world, she'd learned to navigate its dangers. She carried iron, salt, new protection spells. She was as safe as a human could be in a supernatural world. She never saw the car. It came out of nowhere, jumping the curb at high speed. Evelyn heard the engine roar, turned, saw the headlights. She tried to jump aside but wasn't fast enough. The impact was catastrophic. She felt her body flying, felt bones breaking, felt the sickening crunch as she hit the pavement. Pain exploded through her, white-hot and all-consuming. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Blood spread beneath her in a growing pool. Through dimming vision, she saw the car speed away. Saw people running toward her, heard screaming. Heard someone calling 911. And then she heard another voice, closer than possible. "No. No, no, no." Richard appeared above her, having moved faster than human eyes could track. His face was stricken, terrified in a way she'd never seen. "Evelyn, stay with me. Stay with me." She tried to speak, but blood filled her mouth. Tried to tell him it was okay, that she wasn't afraid. But nothing came out. "You're dying," Richard said, his voice breaking. "Minutes, maybe less. I can save you, but only if you choose it. Blink once for yes, twice for no." This was it. The choice she'd been given time to consider, now compressed into seconds. Live forever as a vampire, or die here on a Manhattan sidewalk at 28. Evelyn thought of her parents, her friends, her human life. Then she thought of Richard, of centuries together, of love that would never end. She blinked once. "Hold on," Richard whispered. He bit his wrist, opening a vein, and pressed it to her lips. "Drink. Drink and live." Vampire blood was like liquid fire. It burned down her throat, spreading through her dying body with agonizing intensity. She felt her heart stuttering, felt her body shutting down even as something else, something powerful and dark, took hold. Richard gathered her in his arms and ran. The last thing Evelyn remembered was the sensation of movement, of flying through the city night, before darkness claimed her entirely. Evelyn woke 3 days later. She was in Richard's bedroom, his private sanctuary she'd never been permitted to enter before. Heavy curtains blocked all light. The room was silent, perfectly climate-controlled. She felt different. Every sensation was amplified. She could hear the traffic 50 floors below, could smell the city even through closed windows. When she moved, it was with a fluid grace she'd never possessed. "Easy," Richard's voice came from the doorway. "Your body is still adjusting." Evelyn sat up, and the movement was so fast it startled her. "What happened?" "You were hit by a car. Dying. I transformed you, with your consent." The memories flooded back. The impact. The pain. The choice. Who did this? Richard's face darkened. "Your stalker." He'd been waiting, watching for an opportunity. When he saw you alone, he took it. A final act of rage that you'd escaped him. "Did you?" "He won't harm anyone again. That's all you need to know." Evelyn looked down at her hands. They looked the same but felt different. Stronger. When she concentrated, she could hear Richard's heartbeat, or the memory of one, an echo from his human life that his body still performed out of habit. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Thirsty," she admitted. Her throat burned with it, an ache she'd never experienced but instinctively understood. Richard nodded and produced a blood bag from a small refrigerator hidden in the wall. "Drink slowly. Your body needs time to adjust." The blood should have been revolting. Instead, it was the most delicious thing she'd ever tasted. She drank greedily, feeling strength flow into her new body. When she finished, Richard sat beside her. "I'm sorry. I know this wasn't how you wanted it to happen. I know you wanted more time. You saved my life. I changed your life. It's not the same thing." Evelyn took his hand. "Richard, I blinked once. I chose this. And I'd choose it again. Even now. Even knowing what you've lost." She thought about it. Really thought about it. She'd lost her humanity, her mortality, her normal life. But she'd gained something too. Strength, power, and an eternity with the person she loved. "Yes," she said finally. Even now. Evelyn's transformation into vampire society was not easy. There were rules, protocols, a whole political structure she'd been only dimly aware of as a human. Now, as one of them, she had to navigate it directly. Richard presented her to the vampire court, a council of ancient vampires who governed supernatural affairs in New York. She knelt before them, demonstrated her control, and swore the oaths required of all newly turned vampires. "You're lucky," one elder told her, "having Richard as your sire. He's respected, powerful. Others will think twice before challenging you." But not everyone was pleased with her transformation. "She was human," one vampire spat during a gathering. "Richard has made her out of sentiment, not strength. She'll be a liability." Evelyn proved them wrong. Richard trained her relentlessly. Combat, tracking, using her new senses. She discovered she had a talent for it, a natural grace that vampirism had enhanced rather than created. More importantly, she kept her humanity. The compassion, the empathy, the moral center that had defined Evelyn Stuart didn't disappear with her heartbeat. If anything, it became stronger. She used her position to help others. Humans who stumbled into supernatural danger, she guided to safety. Young vampires struggling with their transformation, she mentored. She became a bridge between the human world she'd left and the vampire world she'd joined. "You're changing the culture," Richard observed one night, 6 months after her transformation. "Making vampires remember what they used to be." "Is that bad?" "No," he said, pulling her close. "It's extraordinary. You're extraordinary." But with visibility came danger. The attack came from an unexpected direction. Richard had enemies. 2 centuries of existence ensured that. Most were dead or had made peace with him. But one had been waiting, biding her time. Her name was Katerina, and she'd been Richard's lover in the early days of his vampiric existence. She'd taught him to hunt, to survive, to embrace what he'd become. And when he'd eventually left her, choosing a path of restraint over indulgence, she'd vowed revenge. She struck during a vampire gathering, a formal event at the Metropolitan Museum after hours. Evelyn was there representing Richard, who'd been delayed. Katerina approached her with a smile. "So you're the new pet. The Eleanor replacement." Evelyn kept her composure. "I'm Evelyn, and I'm no one's replacement." "Aren't you?" Katerina's eyes glittered with malice. "Do you really think he loves you? Or does he love what you remind him of, a ghost he spent 2 centuries mourning?" The words cut deeper than Evelyn wanted to admit. It was a fear she'd harbored secretly, one she'd never voiced to Richard. "Our relationship is none of your concern," Evelyn said coldly. "But it is. Because Richard destroyed me when he left, and now I get to return the favor." Katerina moved with vampire speed, a blade suddenly in her hand. Wooden, coated with something that stank of old magic. Evelyn barely dodged. The blade sliced her arm, and fire spread from the wound. Poison. Something designed to harm vampires. Other vampires scattered, not wanting to be caught in the conflict. This was old business, ancient grudges. They'd let it play out. Evelyn fought back, using everything Richard had taught her. She was younger, weaker in vampire terms, but she was faster, more desperate. The fight destroyed priceless art, shattered cases, turned the museum gallery into a war zone. "He'll never truly love you," Katerina hissed as they circled each other. "You'll always be a shadow of what he lost." "You're wrong," Evelyn gasped, her arm burning. I asked him that once. Asked if I was just a replacement. You know what he said? That he'd thought so, at first. But that I'd become something more. Someone who saw him not as a monster or a guardian, but as a person capable of change. I don't replace Eleanor. I honor her memory by being someone worthy of the life she lost. Katerina lunged again, but this time Evelyn was ready. She caught the blade, letting it pierce her hand, and used the momentum to pull Katerina close. With her other hand, she grabbed an iron sculpture from a nearby pedestal and swung it with all her vampire strength. The impact sent Katerina flying through a wall. Evelyn stood, bleeding and poisoned but alive. Tell Richard's other enemies that I'm not easy prey. I'm his partner, his equal. And I'll defend what's mine. Katerina fled before the vampire courtguards arrived. When Richard reached the museum, he found Evelyn sitting among the wreckage, her wounds slowly healing now that the poisoned blade had been removed. You fought Katerina, he said, kneeling beside her. It wasn't a question. She attacked me. Said I was just a replacement for Eleanor. And what did you say? That she was wrong. That I'm not a replacement. I'm something new. Someone who chose you, chose this life, chose us. Richard cupped her face gently. You are. God, Evelyn, you are so much more than I ever dared hope for. Eleanor was my past, my tragedy. But you're my future. However long that lasts. Forever, Evelyn said firmly. It lasts forever. They kissed among the ruins, two vampires who'd found something rare in an eternal existence, genuine love. 5 years after her transformation, Evelyn stood in a new art gallery, her own, this time. Stuart Gallery, specialized in showcasing emerging artists, giving them the same chance she'd been given as a young curator. But it also served another purpose. It was a neutral ground, a safe space where humans and supernatural beings could interact without fear. Richard stood beside her at the opening, looking impossibly handsome in a dark suit. To the human guests, he was simply Evelyn's mysterious boyfriend. To the supernatural guests, and there were several, carefully mingling, he was much more. You've built something remarkable, he said quietly. We have, she corrected. This is ours. A bridge between worlds. It hadn't been easy. The vampire court had been skeptical. Human authorities had been oblivious. But Evelyn had persisted, using her unique position as both former human and current vampire to create something unprecedented. Now there were more places like this throughout the city. Safe houses, neutral territories, places where the supernatural and mundane could coexist. Evelyn had started a movement, and others had followed. Do you regret it? Richard asked. Giving up your human life? Evelyn thought about her answer carefully. She'd lost things, certainly. Her parents had been told she'd moved to Europe for work, a necessary lie, as they couldn't know what she'd become. She'd lost the simple pleasures of sunlight and normal food. She'd lost the option of a normal life, children, growing old gracefully. But she'd gained so much more. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. Every choice I made led me here, to you, to this life. I was protected by shadows once. Now I am one. And I use that darkness to protect others. My guardian angel, Richard murmured. Yours, she agreed. Always yours. As the opening reception continued around them, Richard took Evelyn's hand. To human eyes, they were just another couple at an art gallery. To those who knew, they were something much more, a vampire lord and his companion, proof that love could exist even in the darkest places. Evelyn Stuart had been stalked by darkness. She'd been protected by it. And finally, she'd become it. But she'd learned that darkness wasn't always evil. Sometimes it was simply misunderstood. Sometimes it was necessary. And sometimes it was the only thing standing between innocent people and the true monsters of the world. She'd thought she'd wanted a normal life, a safe life. Instead, she'd found a purpose. And she'd found love, eternal, passionate, real. Years later, when young vampires asked her about her transformation, about choosing immortality, she always told them the truth. I was given a choice between dying young or living forever. But the real choice wasn't about time, it was about love. About finding someone worth spending eternity with. I found that in Richard Nate, and I've never looked back. Sometimes, late at night when they patrolled the city together, Richard would ask her if she missed being human. "I miss some things," she'd admit. "Sunlight on my face. The taste of coffee. The simplicity of not having to hide what I am. But I'd choose this 1,000 times over. I'd choose you 1,000 times over." And that was the truth. Evelyn Stuart had been protected by shadows. Now she was one of them. And in the darkness, she'd found her light.